In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, June 5th, here in South Korea. President Yoon and his African counterparts partake in a business summit on this Wednesday here in Seoul that also gathered corporate heavyweights and industry pundits to address bilateral trade opportunities and more. Meanwhile, Seoul Central Bank says Korea's gross domestic product rose 1.3% on quarter during the first 3 months of this year to log the largest on-year expansion in over 2 years on the back of strong exports. And US President Joe Biden says North Korea's nuclear program at present remains as threatening as it did in the past, and that the US will not accept the presence of nuclear weapons on the Korean peninsula. Heads of government and corporate heavyweights are now partaking in the Korea Africa Business Summit here in Seoul on this Wednesday. The gathering, hosted by Seoul's Trade Ministry, seeks to provide participants with a platform of information and interaction on future business endeavors that serve the interests of all parties involved. On the agenda are discussions on industrial development, trade expansion, food security, as well as that of minerals and climate change. Earlier this morning, President Yoon and his co-host, President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani of Mauritania, delivered keynote speeches at the opening ceremony. On the sidelines of the multilateral meetings, President Yoon continues to engage bilaterally with his counterparts from Africa. Back on Tuesday, cooperation on core minerals and that on rice production were addressed during a one-on-one summit with Madagascar. During the Korea-Kenya summit, infrastructure projects, food security, and broader economic partnerships were examined. President Yoon also touched upon investment and infrastructure initiatives with Ghana, while with Liberia, democracy was addressed. Today, that is Wednesday, bilateral talks with Mauritania, Equatorial Guinea, Comoros, Botswana, Eswatini, Central African Republic, and the Seychelles are on the agenda. Members of the African media are also quite optimistic about greater collaboration between South Korea and their continent. Our Park Gonu covers their thoughts.
I'm here on the first day of the historic 2024 Korea-Africa Summit held here in Korea. The event not only drew attention domestically, but also from dozens of media outlets in Africa. Let's get their take on the event.
Us creating a relation in terms of probably exchange, trade, and also in terms of companies, Korean companies setting up in Africa, and especially in Eswatini, so that we can benefit in terms of creating jobs and obviously innovation and things like that.
He added the combination of Korea's advanced technology and Eswatini's various mineral resources could help their country develop. A media representative from Malawi also shared the same sentiment, but mentioned potential cooperation in tourism and agriculture.
And another aspect is tourism. Our country is looking forward to have as many tourists as possible coming from different countries, including Korea. Most of our farmers are still using the traditional ways of farming, advanced equipment like tractors that we know for sure that Korea does have these kind of modern equipment, agricultural equipment. So we are looking forward into those aspects of saying that Korea can help us to invest in these sectors of agriculture.
He added that the Korea-Africa Summit should act as a place where real deals between Korea and African countries actually are promoted. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation believes her country's location makes it a lucrative business partner for South Korea, especially in the fields of green trade initiatives and technology transfer. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang met up with her.
Egypt, located in the northeastern corner of Africa, acts as a gateway to 3 major regions: Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Its Suez Canal, which carries about 15% of the global trade volume, is the fastest sea route between Europe and most of Asia. Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation, who visited Seoul to take part in the Korea-Africa Summit, says with the Suez Economic Zone, many companies have set up businesses in Egypt to export to Africa, as well as to benefit from the free trade agreements that Egypt has with other countries. She added that the government looks forward to welcoming Korean companies in fields such as those that can contribute to Egypt meet its climate goals.
South Korea is very well known for the technology, so in the ICT sector, the digital transformation is very important for us. Also when it comes to technology, water desalination requires a lot of technology, and this is again one of the sectors which is very much in line with the green transition and climate action. Also with respect to the renewable sources of energy, be it wind or solar, is another a very important sector for us.
Samsung Electronics has already had a manufacturing facility in Egypt for more than 10 years now and plans to invest more in the country. Hyundai Rotem, a heavy industry company under the Hyundai Motor Group, won a deal worth more than $600 million in 2022 to supply trains for Cairo's metro lines, in which the minister says has several benefits.
It localizes industrialization, it creates opportunities, it has technology transfer, and it's a very good opportunity for Hyundai to be able to export to the African continent. So it's a very important project for us, and we take it actually as a flagship to think about other ways to also industrialize, to localize other industries within the country.
South Korea and Egypt have had diplomatic relations since 1995 and mark 30 years of diplomatic relations next year.
So in addition to the big companies in Egypt, there are so many other projects which are addressing health, gender, NGOs, etc. So there's a very diverse portfolio that we have with Korea, and I think the 30th anniversary provides a very good opportunity for us to show Koreans and Egyptians how this collaboration and cooperation has been beneficial for both people.
As Egypt plans to build a stronger partnership with South Korea, its state-run airline Egypt Air is also pushing to establish a direct flight between Cairo and Seoul as early as next year. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Ensuring food security remains a critical task for Africa. That being said, our senior correspondent Oh Seong sat down with Africa's representative at the UN Food and Agricultural Organization for some insight on potential related endeavors between Korea and Africa.
Innovation should be the basis of South Korea and Africa's cooperation to achieve access to affordable and nutritious food across the African continent. That's according to Abibi Gabriel, Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa at the Food and Agriculture Organization. Speaking to Arirang News during the first ever Korea-Africa Summit, Gabriel said the two sides' cooperation is all the more urgent as Africa's food security faces multiple shocks, including internal conflicts, droughts and floods, which cause people to become displaced.
There are other factors as well. You know, we just came out of COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, and also global political instabilities and wars have impacts on agri-food systems, such as the war in Ukraine. You know, Africa depends a lot on imported cereals and also for fertilizer, and the global economic downturns also impact agri-food systems. So we're talking about a multitude of factors. Now, the situation wasn't really positive because the figures indicate that hunger has been on the rise. You know, 1 out of 5, about 20% of Africans do not have enough to eat at the moment. And rightly, both man-made and natural shocks have contributed to this.
What would be the best way or the best holistic way to increasing food availability and also affordability across for African households?
Yes, in Africa we focus on a few things. It is about transformation of the agri-food systems along the whole value chain, not just about seeds and fertilizers inputs, but all the way, the value chain development, the post-harvest. But at the center of it is increasing productivity. The level of productivity in Africa is low. It is about 30% of the average for developing countries, which means there is a lot of opportunity to expand productivity. So that is, in FAO, we call it better production, but also better nutrition. About 1 billion people in Africa do not afford healthy diets. It's expensive. So we have to make it affordable for them by producing more, by reducing the cost of production. So there are solutions, and in FAO, we call them 4 betters, better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. But we can only achieve this when we have efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems.
He noted that Korea supports rice production, rice value chain development, along with the production of fish and aquaculture, and efforts for greater trade and investment in countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe.
So how do you hope to see Korea-Africa cooperation in food security evolve after this summit?
You see, one of the important reasons why we in FAO, and I come from Africa as FAO representative for the Africa region, we look forward to Africa-Korea collaboration, is because Korea has demonstrated how to transform its economy, its production sectors in a very short period of time. And there's a lot of opportunity in Africa to boost agricultural production and value chain development. And the best way to collaborate is to make it long-term commitment, to improve, to build on what exists already in terms of collaboration on research and development and technology and innovation. Already the Republic of Korea has been collaborating with a number of countries in Africa to support technology transfer, knowledge sharing, research and development, value chain development, youth employment in many countries. So the work has already been begun. It is there. It needs to be strengthened a little bit.
I see. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope your trip to Seoul is a successful one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
The first plenary session of the 22nd National Assembly is underway, with a vote on the Speaker and Deputy Speakers taking place. Now, 5-term lawmaker Woo Won-shik of the main opposition Democratic Party is likely to become the Speaker. The ruling People Power Party, for its part, is boycotting the vote, claiming that the session was opened in the absence of bipartisan agreement on the agenda. Rival parties on Wednesday morning failed to reach a consensus on the allocation of standing committee chairperson seats. They have nonetheless agreed to hold additional talks on Friday. Seoul Central Bank says Korea's gross domestic product rose 1.3% on quarter during the first 3 months of this year. Our correspondent Moon Hye-ryun has the latest.
South Korea's economy expanded in the first quarter to show promising growth on the back of booming exports. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday, the country's gross domestic product grew 1.3% on quarter between January and March, the same as the advanced estimate given at the end of April. This is the largest on-quarter hike recorded in over 2 years, breaking a sluggish growth trend of below 1%. A downturn in exports led to a contraction of 0.5% in the fourth quarter of 2022, but immediately bounced back up to record 5 straight quarters of growth. Construction investment saw a large rise due to recovery in civil and building construction, jumping by 3.3%. A turnaround in semiconductor exports was also reflected in the latest data, with the IT sector and petroleum goods contributing to the overall rise of 1.8% for exports. Government consumption also expanded by 0.8% on the back of increased expenditure on goods. However, facility investment fell by 2%, while imports also dropped by 0.4% on the back of lower natural gas prices. Meanwhile, the country's gross national income, the total earned by people and businesses, was up 2.4% from the fourth quarter of last year. Net foreign income, calculated by subtracting the income earned by foreigners in the country from the total income earned by Koreans from foreign sources, tallied up to the same as the previous quarter. The agency explained that the GNI overall saw a rise due to improving trade conditions, which reduced trade losses for the country. The topic of when and how the country's GNI per capita will surpass $40,000 has been raised for some time now, after $36,194 was recorded in 2023. A spokesperson from the agency said this.
It's difficult to say exactly when we'll reach that goal because GNI per capita is dependent on so many factors such as real income, GDP deflator, inward and outward remittances, and the foreign exchange market. But should the country's currency stabilize, we predict that it should be possible within a few years.
As of 2023, the country ranked 6th in the world in terms of GNI per capita, between Italy and Taiwan. 문혜련, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea has suspended a cross-border military pact aimed at defusing tensions on the Korean peninsula in response to the most recent spate of provocations by North Korea. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has signed the motion that was passed by the cabinet meeting on Tuesday morning to suspend all clauses of the 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement.
The government has decided to suspend all effectiveness of the September 19th military agreement until mutual trust between the two Koreas is restored, effective Tuesday, June 4th, as of 3 p.m., after the decision of the cabinet and the president's approval.
The 2018 Inter-Korean military agreement was aimed at defusing military tensions and preventing accidental military conflict at the border. But military officials, including South Korea's defense minister, have argued that the agreement compromises South Korean military readiness.
Since signing the agreement, North Korea has deliberately and repeatedly conducted violations and provocations, including firing artillery shells off the coast, firing missiles beyond the NLL, firing at guard posts, and infiltrating with small unmanned aerial vehicles.
Back in November, North Korea declared a virtual termination of the September 19 military agreement. This came after Seoul partially suspended a clause on aerial reconnaissance following North Korea's launch of a military spy satellite the night before.
Despite North Korea's repeated violations and provocations, our military has continued to abide by the agreement. However, since failing to launch the military reconnaissance satellite back on May 27th, the North has launched missiles, sent large-scale balloons carrying waste, and jammed GPS systems, gravely threatening the safety of our people and causing property damage.
The deputy minister added that the North Korean regime is solely responsible for the turn of events and warned of a firm response should the North engage in further provocations. With the suspension in effect, the deputy minister hinted of the possible resumption of military drills near the military demarcation line and the Northwest Islands. Such drills had been restricted by the agreement. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And South Korea, the US and Japan on Tuesday condemned North Korea at a regular board meeting of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In a joint statement, the three countries voiced grave concern over the recent series of ballistic missile launches by the regime, including that of a failed satellite, adding fears of a potential seventh nuclear test. The statement also took issue with military collaboration between the regime and Russia, including the transfer of weapons. Now, this is the second time the three countries have issued a joint condemnation of North Korea at the IAEA. And North Korea's nuclear program at present remains as threatening as it did in the past. Now, this is according to US President Joe Biden while speaking to an American news magazine. Our Lee Shi-hu has details.
U.S. President Joe Biden, in an interview with Time magazine last week, said that North Korea's nuclear program is equally as threatening as it was before. When asked whether the situation was getting worse, he added he does not think it's more threatening. The president said that, quote, as long as there are nuclear weapons available, it's always going to be a problem, adding that former U.S. President Donald Trump was wrong in not wanting to work early on 5 years ago. When asked if it's American policy to live with a nuclear or near-nuclear Iran and North Korea, Biden confirmed that it isn't. President Biden further mentioned his visit to South Korea, quote, to reclaim the chips industry, and said the U.S. has secured $865 billion in private sector investments during his presidency. The interview took place at the White House on May 28th, where Biden spoke extensively about his foreign policy agenda. Its full transcript was released on Tuesday. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
And moving from President Biden's foreign policy to his immigration policy in a move that pundits believe is politically motivated, especially ahead of the U.S. presidential election in November, President Biden has issued new executive orders to stem record migrant arrivals at the U.S.-Mexico border. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
Considered one of the biggest obstacles to his re-election bid, U.S. President Joe Biden is taking steps to curb the large influx of illegal immigrants crossing into the United States. Biden on Tuesday signed an executive order to temporarily shut down asylum requests when the 7-day average of daily border crossings hit 2,500 across official ports of entry. The border would reopen only after the figure drops to 1,500 for 7 days in a row and stays that way for 2 weeks.
Today, I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process.
Biden explained that asylum through legal procedures is still possible, adding that the tighter border controls will help the U.S. restore order. The executive order will also have some exemptions, including for unaccompanied children. The Biden administration has faced mounting pressure from the public as the president's lax immigration policy led to illegal crossings at the southern border to spiral out of control. More than 10,000 illegal border crossings were being reported daily at the end of last year. The executive order also comes on the heels of the first television debate between Biden and his rival in the November White House race, Donald Trump, later this month. Trump is expected to criticize Biden's immigration policy over the past 4 years. The former president, on the other hand, has long pledged tighter border controls and immigration policies, going back to his successful election bid in 2016. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi claimed a third consecutive term in office on Tuesday evening after a 6-week-long election. His Bharatiya Janata Party, however, fell short of a 272-seat majority in the 543-seat Lok Sabha, signifying a blow to his party's grip on power. The BJP won 240 seats, which is 63 seats fewer than in 2019. It still secured a majority through its allies in the National Democratic Alliance, which won a total of 293 seats. The opposition India Alliance, led by the Indian National Congress Party, won 234 seats, a big surprise compared to 2019's 80 seats. Modi has been campaigning in full confidence of winning a 2/3 majority with a target of 400 seats. Despite the underwhelming performance, he celebrated at the BJP headquarters in New Delhi, saying that this is a victory for the world's largest democracy. In South Africa, at least 11 people died in the country's KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape provinces on Monday after a storm ripped through the region. Torrential rains caused flooding, while a tornado caused extensive damage to the town of Tongaat near Durban. The Premier of KwaZulu-Natal said that the death toll could rise. American multinational pharmaceutical company Johnson & Johnson was ordered by an Oregon court on Monday to pay $260 million in damages to a woman who said she developed a deadly cancer linked to asbestos exposure from the company's talcum powder. The plaintiff, 49-year-old Kyung Lee, was diagnosed with mesothelioma last year, which she claims is a result of inhaling asbestos-tainted talc for over 30 years. While Johnson & Johnson affirmed that its talc products do not contain asbestos or cause cancer, citing scientific studies, the company is facing over 61,000 talc-related lawsuits, while it continues to pursue a proposed $6.48 billion deal to settle some of the claims. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.